Module 7, the Rite of Passage Myth. In this module, Jose is going to take us through two of the biggest myths that are heard in the internet marketing community. Now, it's hard to say whether people spread this piece of fiction on purpose or whether they just repeat what they hear from other people and assume it must be true. So, myth number one, failing is like a badge of honor. Myth number two, failing is a rite of passage. Jose, would you please explain these for us and why you believe so strongly that they are myths?
Well, it all comes down to personal experience, really. And as you're watching this, you may say to me, my experience has been totally opposite to yours, and that's totally fine. But in my own experience, I did experience a lot of roadblocks and minimal results in my first 6 months as a home business owner online that you could literally say that I failed. And now in the months following, I didn't see overwhelming success, but there was one key difference, and that was progress. So for the first time, I was actually making consistent progress, and I began to realize it wasn't as hard as it was in the beginning. So I'm going to acknowledge that there's a little bit of truth to these myths in that, making mistakes is nearly unavoidable as an entrepreneur. But what I am an advocate against is repeating mistakes and failing in that regard. And that is where failing becomes unacceptable to me, and it should be to you as well.
So, what exactly did you, so how exactly did you go from seeing no results to seeing consistent results online?
Okay, honestly, for me, it really came down to three simple things. Number one, finding the right leadership. So this could be coaches or mentors. Number two is finding the right academy. So, a place where I can receive training and be educated. And number three, finding the right system to use. So marketing tools and things like that. Fortunately, there are plenty of great leaders and academies and systems out there for you to choose from. Now, I'm not here to tell you that mine are the best in the world, but I know they are the best for me. Let me give you an example. I might drive a Ford F-150, but you might prefer a Dodge Ram, and they literally can both get the same job done, and that's fine. My only advice to you would be take the time to find the right three and then just stick to them, okay? I do not endorse what's known as opportunity hopping, or in other words, trying one thing for 3 months and then struggling and failing and then trying a different opportunity and then over and over again. This is a deadly cycle that you do not want to take.
It kind of reminds me of the story of the Jewish people when they came out of Egypt and they wandered in the desert for 40 years before actually entering the promised land.
Exactly, and it's a perfect analogy because sadly, a lot of online marketers do wander the desert for years and years, struggling to find that promised land, but it doesn't have to be this way. It's actually interesting because the Israelites traveled about 750 kilometers from Egypt to Mount Sinai, and that was over a span of only about 44 days, but it was under the direction and help of God. There was no maps, no GPS, no Holiday Inn to stay in for the night, but they were following somebody who knew the way. Now, what happens when the Jewish people become rebellious and they decided to plot their own course is they ended up wandering the desert for 40 years. That's unbelievable. Like, even though they were already halfway there to the promised land, when you look at the Exodus route, Jericho was not that far off. So, anyway, going back to my own wandering in the desert, when I got started in online marketing, after my first few months of seeing very minimal results, I decided to make a U-turn, so to speak, and I did this for two reasons primarily. Number one, my previous sponsors were among the top earners in the company, but they played virtually no part in teaching me the ropes or sharing any of their inside knowledge, and I was a rookie at the time with zero experience. Despite many attempts I made to reach out to them, there was very little reciprocation. Number two, I also at the same time found two individuals by the name of Rich and Anastasia who not only reached out to me, but they went out of their way to help me. And they did this in several ways. First, they identified what I was struggling with. Then they set me on course with a proper game plan, and they got me on track toward where I needed to be.
Yeah, we've got the pleasure to chat with Ace and Rich, and on Skype up, they actually take the time out of their day to speak with you personally and to coach you one on one. And because of how valuable that has been to us, we now practice the exact same thing with our own students because we know people need it. And even that life is quite busy for us, raising three kids and running a business, but we try our best to reach out to our prospects as much as we can because we truly do care. Now, you explained why you change mentors, but you didn't explain why you change companies.
Ah, isn't that the beauty in all this? Now, you see, the business opportunity was the least important item on my list because I was put into a position where I had to find leaders who were actually willing to help me succeed. I didn't really care at that point what biz op they were in. You see, it's all about the people and the mentoring. And what I learned the hard way was that just because somebody is a top affiliate, earning the most commissions in the company, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the best leader or even the best teacher. That's something you have to determine based on the results that you get with their mentorship, not on their results. Now, let me tell you a bit about my experience as a professional musician. You may not know that I've got a degree in applied music and have been a music instructor for about 10 years now. Well, some of my best students have been so loyal to me to the extent that they would follow me whenever I switch music schools because I used to work as an independent contractor. Now, eventually, when I opened up my own music studio at home, I actually allowed my students the option of staying with the school that I worked for, and I even promised to recommend the best possible teacher for them, or they could actually join me in my home studio. Well, I quickly learned how my students and even their parents, through the rapport we had built over time, were much more loyal to me, the teacher, than they were to the music school that I worked for. And the cool thing was that I was teaching dozens and dozens of students who had followed me from various different schools in the city because I literally worked for about a dozen schools over the course of 10 years. So, do you see the tremendous value that there is in leadership?
Terrific. Now, let's get back to the reason why failing is not a badge of honor or a rite of passage.
Look, there's no question you're going to experience some degree of failure. No amount of mentoring or training in the world is going to change that. If you're learning to ride a bike or to rollerblade for the first time, you're gonna fall on your bottom a few times. I guess the part that I kind of resented is that much of my failure online, the pain and frustration, was totally unnecessary. And when I eventually was taught or I figured out on my own how to do something correctly, there were instantly three things that I would say to myself, and I now call these the three clues that reveal you are not being mentored properly. So, number one, I used to say, that was actually pretty easy, having previously thought that it was very hard. Another thing I would used to say to myself is, I never knew that before. And then finally, why didn't anyone ever tell me this before? So think about it. Have you ever said that to yourself? Have you ever been in that situation? That could be a clue that you may not be in a position right now where you're being mentored properly. Now, that's when I really began to question the need to fail because when you're investing your resources, like your money, into being mentored, you should expect to have a level playing field and minimal roadblocks in your path towards success. Here's what a good coach does. A good coach is going to allow you to learn to rollerblade on your own, but will give you knee pads and elbow pads for when you fall, right? They'll let you ride the bike on your own, but they'll put training wheels to decrease the chances of you falling. They'll warn you about sharp curves up ahead and point out the rocks in the road. A real coach helps you make that climb to the top.
So, what we're trying to teach you here is that failing is not a bad thing if it teaches you a valuable lesson that makes you smarter and stronger. But it's not a rule written in stone that you have to fail and struggle for years before you can achieve success.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Especially in internet or network marketing, if you have the right coaches who are teaching you to do the right things, you can certainly bypass a lot of the pain and disappointment that most people deal with due to lack of proper direction. So, just to summarize, this isn't about building you a stairway to heaven, where unicorns will be dancing by your side and rainbows will be surrounding you. It's simply about us as your mentors doing everything in our power to remove or at least warn you about every possible obstacle that will prevent or delay your success. I once heard master marketer Steve Jaffe talk about the average online marketer taking somewhere between 3 to 5 years to even become a top producer on their own, but those with the proper guidance can actually do it in the span of 3 to 12 months. That's actually very quick. Sadly, because of this lack of guidance, about 90% of online marketers quit within the first year simply because of lack of results. Now, that's why we do what we do, because we know how it feels to be stuck in a rut, in a state of dilemma and having nobody that you can email or call for advice. It totally sucks. And it's not what network marketing should be about. I mean, there are too many people out there with their own agenda that are unfortunately only in it to make a buck, and they couldn't care less about their downline. We certainly don't like even using that term because we've never been involved in any MLM and we don't believe in it. The people we sponsor and join on our team are treated as business partners, and our success is mutual.
That's right. So we want to see your name in lights on the leaderboard of your primary opportunity. No matter what product or service you're promoting, we want to help you get there. Now, we're near the end of our blueprint, and in this final module, you will be learning the number one reason why people move backward rather than forward, and how you can only learn but also teach others to overcome that.